If your hands get sweaty just thinking about your CeMAP exam, you are not alone. I've helped hundreds of students get through their CeMAP journey, and one of the biggest challenges that I see students face is exam anxiety or exam nerves. So if you can learn to manage that, you have just increased your chances of passing CeMAP massively. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how to approach your CeMAP exam questions strategically, the science behind exam anxiety, and a quick breathing exercise that is going to be a game changer in your exam. So passing CeMAP isn't just about how much you know. It's about taking the material that you've learned from the textbook or from an e-learning platform and applying that knowledge to a particular question. So if you can stay calm and think clearly, you are going to be in the best possible headspace to pass first time. If you get this part right, your pass rate is more likely to go way up. Now, CeMAP questions can look trickier than they actually are, and they are designed to trip you up. So what you might notice is if you've seen any of the LIBF mock papers, is that the wording on them is designed to make you go, oh my God, I don't understand the question. And the reality is you will if you've done the work. So tip number one is to read the question. And I know that that sounds really obvious, but when you're under pressure, people tend to skim read. And this is the worst possible thing that you can do in your CeMAP exam because you are really likely to miss something important. Watch out for words like always or except or most likely, because very often when they put those in the question, sometimes what they're actually doing is flipping the question on its head. So be very mindful of that. Step number two is to eliminate the wrong answers. So for every CeMAP question that you have 4 potential answers to work from. And the process that you are going to put in place is to read the question, take a breath, read the question again, and then rule out what you know is definitely wrong. Chances are there will be at least 2 things that you can rule out. And even if you can only rule out 2, you've just increased your chances of guessing the right answer. So always follow those steps. And step 3 is to mark it and move on. What I don't want you to do is waste 10 minutes of your exam time sat reading the same question over and over again. So if you've read it, you've taken that breath, you've reread it, and then you've picked the best answer. If you're more than 70% sure that answer is right, leave it alone, hit next, go to the next question. If you're less than 70% sure that it's right, you can do what's called flag the question. So in the top right-hand corner of your exam screen, you'll have a little red flag button. If you press that, when you've gotten through all of your questions in the exam, it will then ask you if you'd like to go back through your flagged questions. So what I say to everybody is, read the question, answer it if you can. If you're more than 70% confident, leave it alone. Less than 70% confident, hit that flag button and you can come back to it at the end. It is important that you answer every single question in the exam instead of spending 20 minutes on 1 or 2 questions and then missing out on answering the 20 that are left over. Remember that feeling nervous before your exam isn't a weakness, it's actually biology. So when your brain thinks you're under threat, which is what exams tend to make us feel like, you go into what's called a fight or flight response, which means you either want to fight it or you want to run away, and you will fall into one of 2 categories. But when this happens, our heart rates spike, our breathing tends to get shallow, or if you're anything like me, I hold my breath, which doesn't help. And generally, our logical thinking shuts down. So for a financial qualification, that ain't great. But here's the kicker. The more that you panic, the more that your brain is likely to fog up, the less likely you are going to be able to apply your knowledge in that exam scenario. So I'm going to help you with a tactic that I give to all of my students if they feel like they're particularly nervous. Even if you're not, I'd actually recommend that you follow this process because it works well for everybody. So let's do this together right now. Here is an example CeMAP question. So the question is, gilts are a type of A, government borrowing, B, government lending, C, consumer borrowing, or D, corporate finance solution. So we know that this is a CeMAP 1 question and we're going to follow the process. Read the question, take a breath, read the question again, and rule out the answers that you know are definitely wrong. What I think is going to happen with most of you here is that you will rule out C and D straight away. And you would be absolutely right to do that. And then we're left with 2. Are gilts government borrowing or are they government lending? So let's talk about what actually happens with gilts. And if you haven't done my gilts training video, definitely do that. I'll link that below. What we know about gilts is that if you as an investor wanted to buy a gilt, you would effectively be lending the government money. Therefore, the government are borrowing that money from you. Therefore, a gilt is a type of government borrowing. So the right answer is A. Now, super well done if you got that right. But this is just an example of how sometimes really simple questions can be made really difficult with the wording. So if you follow the steps of reading the question, taking the breath and reading the question again, this is going to calm your nervous system and it is going to get rid of that brain fog. And this isn't woo-woo, okay? This is used by anything from Olympic athletes to Navy SEALs. Any exam scenario or high pressure scenario, breathing tactics work. And to finish off, a few more bonus tips to help tackle your exam nerves. Number one is don't be late. Make sure you arrive early. If you're doing it in a test centre, try and turn up 20 to 15 minutes before. Make sure you've got your valid ID with you. Outside of that, there's not a huge amount extra that you can do. If it's a home exam, make sure that you ran your software checks weeks ago. Do not leave it to the day before your exam, because if you find that there's a problem with your system, you then have to stress and find another laptop. So run those early. You can log into your online exam up to half an hour before your due date or your due time. So make sure that you've logged into there. Do a little bit of a warm-up before, as in if you've got your hands on mock papers, do one an hour before your exam, but don't do too many because you don't want to get fatigued. And trust your gut. If you've got a question where you're just not sure, try and trust your gut because sometimes it is telling you something. And finally, remember, CeMAP is not a memory test. It's about understanding concepts and applying them calmly. And if you want more strategies like this, remember you can get access to 12 hours worth of completely free CeMAP training material by clicking the link below. You don't need to put your bank details in. You can just get access straight away and help level up your CeMAP studies. Good luck.